So after wishing you a Shavua Tov. We're really officially up to the Mishnah on Daf Kuf Yud Tes Amud Beis, but I'd like to do a little bit of a Agadita. It's kind of borderline halacha, borderline Agadita, and that's on Kuf Yud Ches Amud Aleph. So let's see if we can find the Gemara that says the following. Let's see, it's kind of smack in the middle of the Amud, maybe a little bit below the middle. And the first word in the line is Tisa. And that has to do with the sugya of Lashon Hara. So let me just know if you have it. Oh, actually, John, you have the Masechet, correct?
Yes.
Oh, so good. So if you take a look at Masechet on Kuf Yud Ches Amud Aleph, the third page, it'll say Gimel in brackets.
Gimel, yeah.
On the left column.
Yeah.
V'chimeachar de'ika hal hagadol anan my time amrinan high.
Okay. I found it.
Right. So it means the Gemara is bothered by the following question. That we have what's called Hal HaGadol, and that has an enumerated list. Oh, I see Ruvain joined us. Yeah, so Ruvain, we're on Daf Kuf Yud Ches. And on all the days of Hallel, which means the three regalim, we're going to recite the formal Kriyas HaHallel, B'tzibur. And even in a case where a community in Israel was saved and they experienced the salvation from impending disaster, Chas v'shalom, then we recite Hallel, but not Hallel Gadol. Hallel Gadol, and we had different interpretations exactly where you start and where you end, but basically it's a whole enumerated list extolling the Almighty for so many different things. Why is it that we leave Hallel Gadol for Leil HaPesach rather than use Hallel Gadol for every single Chiyuv Hallel? And the Gemara answers, Mishum sheyesh bo chamisha dvar malol. We're going to list 5 dimensions of Geula about which we extol the Almighty in the standard formal Kriyas HaHallel that we have. So what we're doing now is we're expanding from Geulas Mitzrayim to include a broader scope, and we're going to show that Hallel reflects all of those elements, 5 in number. Number 1, Yetzias Mitzrayim. Number 2, Kriyas Yamsuf. Number 3, Matan Torah. Number 4, Tchias HaMesim. And finally, Chevlo Shel Mashiach, which has to do with the tzaros at the time of Mashiach, that God will save us from those, spare us from those tzaros. And now we're going to go through these 5 dimensions and see where in Hallel do we have these 5 dimensions. First, Yetzias Mitzrayim, and that's towards the very beginning of Hallel. It says, B'tzeis Yisrael miMitzrayim, Beis Yaakov Yam Lois. Number 2, Kriyas Yamsuf, and that we have from the same chapter until Hayom Ra'ov Hayonos Ha'Yarden Yisov Liachar, and that took place at the time of Kriyas Yamsuf. Now we have Matan Torah is also mentioned in Hal D'chsiv from the same chapter until Kuf Yud Daled Ha'arim Rakdu Che'elim Yivaos Kivnei Tzon. the mountains were dancing, and that took place during Maimon Har Sinai. Now we have Tchias HaMesim. Where do we have Tchias HaMesim in Hallel? Dichsiv, and now we're fast forwarding to chapter Kuf Tes Zayin until Mesalech Lifnei Hashem B'Arzos HaChayim. I will walk in the presence of God in the lands of the living. And this is referring to the period of time after Tchias HaMesim. How do we know that? Because it says Ba'arzos. And Ba'arzos is in Lashon Rabim in the plural, not Ba'eretz in Lashon Yochid. And this is a remez, an allusion to the resurrection that will take place in the future for each individual member of Klal Yisrael. And it refers to Kama Mine Arotzos. There are different types of countries on the face of the earth. There's Har, there's Emek, there's Shvela. And so Be'arzos HaChayim refers to Tchias HaMesim. Finally, number 5 on the list is Chevlo Shel Mashiach. Where is that mentioned in Hallel? Dichsivbo in the same chapter, 116. It says, Lo lanu Hashem lo lanu, ki l'shimcha tein kavod. V'yomer Rabbi Yochanan, Lo lanu Hashem lo lanu zu tefila al tzoras shibud malchus. We are praying to Hashem to spare us from the sovereign rulership in the exile. And included in those tzaros are Chevlei Mashiach. Ika Diamri, Rabbi Yochanan, a second version of the statement of Rabbi Yochanan, Lo lanu Hashem lo lanu zo milchemes Gog uMagog. So it's not the lo lanu to save us from Shibud Golios, but rather to save us from the tzara of the battle of Gog uMagog. And he points out here in the name of the Maharsha, Sheyavo lilochem im Yisrael bi'achros hayomim, that Gog uMagog are going to come to battle Klal Yisrael at the end of days. This is based on Yechezkel. And lo l'manenu v'lo b'skusenu v'vakshim latzira b'chevlo shemesheh. We're not asking that God, you should spare us from Chevlo Mashiach because of our own zchus or for ourselves, but rather, ki l'shimcha tein kavod. This is for the kavod of your great name. And this is parallel to what we insert in the Tefillah Shmona Esrei throughout the Yom Noraim. Asay lemancha im lo lemanenu. That God, you should do it for your name, to be Makadosh your name in the world. Lemancha Elokim Chaim. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Omar, he has a different answer as to why we prefer the formal Hallel, mitnei sheyesh bo milut nefesh shel tzaddikim beGehenna. So it seems from Rav Nachman that everybody goes into Gehenna, even tzaddikim, but the tzaddikim are saved from Gehenna. And that's based on the pasuk that we recite in Hallel, shenemar, Ana Hashem malta nafshi. Because this entire mizmor, afafuni chevlei mavis mitzauri umitzari shol mitzauri, revolves around the Gehenna, the Sheol, which is called Gehenna. And that's what it means, umitzari Sheol mitzauni. Now, in the simple pshat in the pasuk, David is asking HaKadosh Baruch to save him from all the tzaras that he suffers in this world. But al pi derech haremez, this pasuk is referring to saving the tzaddikim specifically for the tzaros of Chevlei Mashiach and Gehenna. Chizkiah offers a third answer to the question why we recite Hallel the way we have it. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were thrust into a hot furnace by Nebuchadnezzar, V'aliyasan mimenu, and they miraculously survived the very hot furnace. And all this is in Sefer Daniel Perek Gimel. But each one of the three would recite one part of a pasuk, and then in unison, they all responded with the end of the pasuk. So let's go through the pasuk. Yiridasan dichsiv lolanu Hashem lolanu. We're asking Hashem to spare us from that Yerida into, in this case, of course, Kivshana Eish, but in general for all of us, from Gehenna. Dichsiv, Lolanu Hashem Lolanu. So that's the Yerida L'Kivshana Eish. Amar Chanan. This one, Lolanu Hashem Lolanu, was recited by Hananiah. Then it says, Ki l'shimcha tein kavod, Amar Mishael. That was recited by Mishael. And finally, the end of the pasuk, Al chazcha mitecha, Amar Azariah. Afterwards comes a pasuk that was recited in unison by all three. Lama yomra goyim ayenu alahehem. Amru kulam. They all responded in unison. And when it says in the pasuk, Lama Yomru Hagoyim, which sounds like the argument of Yechezkel Navi, that Hashem, you should avoid a situation that could be chas v'shalom, a desecration of your name. But the pasuk says, Lama Yomru Hagoyim. Why should the Goyim say, look, your God is not able to protect you? And the story of Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah was in front of the Goyim, as it says in Daniel, Perek Gimel, Nebuchadnezzar, etc. And therefore, our bakasha to the Ribono Shalom is Lama Yomru HaGoyim. Why do we give the Goyim the chance, the opportunity to desecrate your name in Chil Hashem? And now Aliyasa Mikivshana Eish is also mentioned in Hallel. The Siv, in a pasuk in Tehillim Kuf Yud Zayin, Hallelujah Hashem Kol Goyim. Amar Hananiah. That's what Hananiah said when they went up from the Kivshan unscathed. All the Goyim will sing your praise. Then it says Shabchu Kol Umim Amar Mishael. Even the Umim, the nations of the world, will sing your praise. And the very next pasuk, Ki gavar aleinu chazdo, Omar Azariah. And then we have the end of the pasuk in unison, Ve'emes Hashem liolam aluka, Amru kulam. They all responded in unison. And if you take a look at the Marsha quoted here in Nundalit, he says, "V'hainu shal yidei nesad salasam is barer shashemu emes udvarav emes." When Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah came up from the burning fire, the furnace, then it became clear that God is truth. Udvarav emes. Ana Nebuchadnezzar v'yama brich Elohehun di Shadrach, blessed is the God who sent you. The Yesh Omrim, V'emes Hashem Liolam, was recited by the Malach Gavriel. The Malach Gavriel is the Malach that's Memuna. He's designated as the Malach to save the Tzaddikim. And when Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah survived the Kivshin Eish, he was with them, Gavriel, the Malach, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu had already promised Gavriel at the time of Avram Avinu that he would be the one to come down and cool off the fire when Nimrod threw Avram into the Kivshin Eish. And now Gavriel has another opportunity to go down to the Kivshin Eish and cool it off, in this case, to save Hananiah, Mishael, V'Azariah. V'yames Hashem li'olam. So it seems that at the time that Avram Avinu was cast into the Kivshin Eish, there was a double mission that was placed on the shoulders of Gavriel HaMalach. Number one, to save Avram, and number two, in a very similar set of circumstances, to save the descendants of Avram when they would be thrust into the Kivshin Eish at the time of Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. B'shasha ipil nimrod arashas Avram Avinu sol Kivshin Eish Amar Gavriel lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ribono Shel Olam Eirein v'atzanein v'atzil tzaddik mikivshin Eish. I want to go down to the Kivshin and cool it off and save the tzaddik. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Ani yachid bolami hu yachid bolamo na li yachid lahatzil es hayachid. It's more appropriate that I, as the one, should be the one to save Avram, who's the one, as the pasuk says in Yechezkel Amin Gimel, Echad Hoya Avram. So Gavriel was, in a sense, robbed of the opportunity to save Avram. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Einei Mekapech Schar Kol Birya. I don't want to deny Schar to Gavriel. He had a ratzon to save Avram. Omar, so Hashem says to Gavriel, Tizke, V'tatzil shlosha mibnei banav. You will be zocha and merit to save 3 of his sons, meaning 3 sons of Avram Avinu, which is Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So Gavriel finally got his opportunity to go down into the Kivshin Eish, cool off the fires, and save the tzad. You know, it's very interesting when you think about schar for malachim. Schar is usually understood to be reward for making the right choice, the right decision in the Bechira Chavshis, using Bechira Chavshis in the proper way. But Malach Asharis don't have Bechira Chavshis. They don't have a Yetzer Hara. They're not tempted to do evil. They don't overcome the forces and the barriers that prevent them from serving Hashem. So why does Gavriel, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu mekapech schar kol birya? What's the schar here? So let's take a quick look in the Yalkut HaBi'urim for Kuf Yud Chet. This you'll find on page 'Sadi Chet, I believe. 1 second, I'm sorry. On page Shin Daled, but they don't want to write it as Shin Daled, so they write it as Daled Shin. He says, Mashma on the left side, Midibra Gemara, Sheyesh lo malochim schar al maseh matovu. Ubekam makomos matzinu shenenshu malochim sha'osu shalo kirotzen Hashem Yisbarach. In the footnote, he says, Malochim nidchu mimechitzasam me'afichas dom. Ubibir inyan ha'onesh b'malochim kosa b'sefer chasidim shali olam lo yavor malach al rotzen Hashem b'zadon ki ein yetzer hara ela ba'odam hanivra lamata. Valmani donim v'nenoshim ha'malochim al dvorim sha'osu b'tos hanovas Michisar Yediyah. This is what we call Omer Mutter. So the Malachim were mistaken about something, and that's like a shogeg. They should have known better, and therefore they will be punished. And what about schar? What about reward? Kosa b'ben yoda sha'af shemedubar kan b'malach u'malachim ein lehem schar. Afal pichen igia schar leGavriel al hisnadvuso la'atzil es Avram. Shariatam she'ein schar le'malachim mipnei she'ein lahem ma'akev mitzidam she'ein lahem yetzer hara aval la'redes li'olam atachton u'lislabesh beguf chamri kosher le'malach. Very hard for Malach to show up as a human being. Dover zeh negativo, it's against his nature. V'lachein kemen shekibel of Gavriel lasos dover hakoshelo bavur avas hatzadik yesh lo schar. So the willingness on the part of the Malach to, in a sense, suffer, I suspect it's a lot more profound than just that, but that's what we have. Okay, then. Now, we'll fast forward, Be'ezer Hashem, to the Mishnah on Daf Kuf Yud Tes Amud Beis. Ein maftirin achar Pesach afi koman. We don't finish the meal of the Korban Pesach with some sort of a dessert of afi koman. The Gemara is going to explain the word afikoman. My afikoman. Amar Rav. Shelo yakru michabura lechabura. That the Mishnah means to say that after they eat the Korban Pesach, they should not uproot themselves from the Bnei Chabura to go to a place where there's another Chabura. And what does afikoman mean? Afiku minaichu. Manaichu is miloshem mana is a kli. Take out your kelim, meaning collect your kelim and let's go eat in another place. So it was apparently a sociological phenomenon that after the meal they used to hop around and visit other people, maybe share recipes or desserts. However, here there's a gzera because a person is not allowed to eat the Korban Pesach in two places. He's only allowed to eat with his chabura in one particular place. So the Rabbanan made a gzera that if you can allow him to eat dessert after he finishes eating the Pesach, and he can eat it somewhere else and pick himself up and join another chabura, he may come to eat the Korban Pesach itself in two makomos. If, on the other hand, he remains in his place, he doesn't relocate himself, then after the Achilas HaPesach, he'd be allowed to eat. The Rabbanan were only instituting a gzera when he picks himself up and moves over to another place. So again, according to Rav, the only prohibition in this Mishnah is when you pick yourself up and relocate yourself. But Shmuel says no. Even if he doesn't relocate himself, it's also to eat an afikomen after Achilas Pesach. Kigon arduloi. What's arduloi? Kmohenu pitrios. Lead. Let's I eat them for dessert. Because laya li'ava. And gozlos, which are more serious, like poultry, for my Rebbe Abba, who's Rab. And he says, Shmuel says you're not allowed to eat these things after the Achilas HaPesach, and that applies even if you're remaining in the same spot. So there's no prohibition here that's being violated of going from one chabura to the other. And what does afikoman mean? Afiku mine. Bring out sweets as a dessert. Kinuach hasoda. And Shmuel says you're not allowed to eat any dessert because we need what's called tam pesach b'fiv. You cannot undermine and cancel the tam of the Korban Pesach. So it seems that Rav never had this isur of eating after the Korban Pesach. Or shall we say it this way, he never bought into the Kiyum mitzvah of Tam Pesach B'Fiv. Rab Chanina bar Shilo Omru, Rab Yochanan Omru, Kigon Tmorim Kloyos V'Gozim. After he eats the Korban Pesach, he should not be eating dates or roasted stalks of grains, or for that matter, of nuts. Tanya Kavosei de Rabbi Yochanan, Ein Maftin Achar Pesach, Kigon Tmorim Kloyos V'Gozim. So what I'd like to do for a minute now is look in the Rambam and see how he quotes this. Let's see if we can find the Rambam. He says, Perek Ches mi Hilchas Matzah Halacha Tes. ואחר כך נמשך בסעודה, ויאכל כל מה שהוא רוצה לאכול, ושעושה כל מה שהוא רוצה לשתות, ואחרונה אוכל מבשר הפסח, אפילו כזייס, ואינו תואם אחרוב כלל. So we're not talking about violating the Isser of eating from two different chavburos in two different locations, but rather the kiyum of Tam Pesach B'fiv. And the Rambam seems to assume that anything you eat after the Pesach is prohibited. And that's the language of Eino Toim Achrov Klal. Ubizman hazeh, all right, we don't have a korban Pesach. Ochel kezayis matzah ve'eino toim achrei klum. So the same din that applies to the korban Pesach now is grafted onto the matzah. Eino toim achrei klum. But I'm assuming that he's talking about the kezayis matzah that you eat after the Suda. But in any event, this Rambam accepts Shmuel that ein maftirin achar matzah afikomen, just like ein maftirin achar Pesach afikomen, and we can't eat anything after the Pesach, after the matzah. Kidei sheyeh hefsek sudaso v'tam bosav b'Pesach or matzah b'fiv. And the Rambam says that we want his termination of the Suda with basar ha-Pesach or matzah b'fiv. And then the Rambam adds three words. Shachiloson hi mitzvah. It's not clear what the Rambam means over here because, all right, achilosan hi mitzvah, but we already were mekayim the mitzvah. He ate the basar Pesach, he ate the matzah. Why do we have this additional halacha, the requirement of ein toim achrei klum? V'shetei tam Pesach of tam matzah b'fiv. Anyone want to take a stab at it? What is achiloson hi mitzvah? I guess if you enjoy something or it's very significant to you, you want to savor the taste in your mouth. And the main mitzvah of achila on this night is either the matzah bisman hazeh or the korban pesach bisman hamikdash. So those are the ikar mitzvahs, and the chibur hamitzvah expresses itself in the fact that you want to hold on to the tam of the achila shel mitzvah. Okay, then, so this was just a little bit on the pun of a taste of what we want to study in Mirz Hashem. And if you take a look, we have Kuf Chav, which again is the sugya of Tam Pesach Befiv, followed by the Mishnah on Kuf Chav, going on to Kuf Chav Amid Beis, and we get a little bit into the laws of Achilas HaPesach. And then on Kuf Chaf Amid Beis, we have the sugyas of Achilas Matzah, and then the Masechta ends on Kuf Chaf Aleph. So let's make a note of where we got up to here. We're talking about Omer Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel Ein Maftir Nachar Matzah Fikomon. We mentioned it, and that's what we want to continue. So today we learned a little bit of Agadita, but again, it's, as I say, it's that Agadita that borders on halacha. In other words, why Hallel the way we have it as opposed to Hallel Gadol, and the different features and elements that are reflected in the Shevach of Hallel. Now, hang in there for just a minute. Let's